This session is brought to you by Design Singapore Council, National Agency for Design in Singapore, and is supported by Trampolene Limited, MoWin Digital, and the National Design Centre. This webinar is part of a series of engagement and sharing sessions under the Good Design Research Initiative, which aims to help designers and design enterprises in Singapore find their unique value proposition in designing for impact through research, experimentation, and a network of knowledge partners. This event is also part of the National Design Centre's thematic lineup on Singapore, Our Home. Information on the Good Design Research and other programs in this month's lineup will be shared with you during the course of the session. Now, before we proceed, I would like to highlight a few housekeeping rules. Should you encounter any technical issues, please reach out to us through the Zoom chat function. We ask for your patience and understanding should the conditions be less than perfect. During this webinar, your audio will be on mute. However, we welcome your questions throughout the sessions at any point in time through the Zoom Q&A function. When posting a question, please state your name, and if you have any specific panelists whom you'd like to respond to your question. Finally, please be informed that this session will be recorded. Now allow me to introduce the speakers and this afternoon's program. My colleague Hui Mei from the Design Singapore Council will be joining us shortly to share an overview of the Good Design Research Initiative. After which, Francis will be speaking about inclusive design for education and work readiness. With over 20 years of professional experience, Francis had collaborated with MNCs on product innovation, mentored startups, translated and commercialized various technologies. Over the past 5 years, he has been actively involved in the social sector, and presently he is the CEO of Trampolene, a non-profit that is spun out of A-Star. Trampolene aims to use technology to develop sustainable social service models for the underprivileged, disadvantaged, and the vulnerable. Last but not least, we have Ianton, CEO of MoWin Digital, who will be speaking on inclusive design using conversational AI. Ianton is a computer engineer by training, but ventured into marketing to bring brands and organizations to global markets. Previously based in China for 8 years, he brings his wealth of experience in international marketing, politics, and economic know-how to companies. Or some of you here might wonder that this isn't really like inclusive design, but fret not. MoWin actually has strong plans for expanding their business into inclusivity, and through this session, you will hear more about inclusive projects that they have embarked on. Without further ado, I will now hand you over to Hui Mei, who will be giving you a quick introduction on the Good Design Research Initiative. Hui Mei, please.
Thanks, Jerica, for the quick introduction. And thank you all for taking the time to join us today. So I'm not sure how many of you out there would have heard about the Good Design Research Initiative, and therefore I would like to take some time to share more on the background. So firstly, I'll be sharing on why good design research is important, and then secondly, on the key elements of the initiative. Its importance in today's context was very apparent when we conducted our research in close consultation with designers and design enterprises. We interviewed over 40 of them, with most of them recognizing that design for impact, which is also what most will recognize as good design, will help them shape their value proposition and stand out in the global marketplace. And on the demand side, there has always been a recognition of the role that design can play in mitigating the world's complex issues. This is especially apparent in the COVID pandemic that we are experiencing right now. And the design innovation that we need goes beyond simply improving user experiences for the retail and F&B, but that it requires deep research. And there is a clear need for this deep research that is fundamental to good design. However, good design research requires two key elements that are not always possible with smaller design firms. First, it requires a significant investment of resources, and second, an ecosystem of strong network of partners. Therefore, with the good design research, the Council plans to bridge these two resource gaps. The first part of the Good Design Research Initiative aims to build a strong network and ecosystem to foster multidisciplinary collaborations that are necessary for design impact projects. We are hoping to achieve these through this webinar, as well as the subsequent sharing and engagement sessions. The second part of the Good Design Research Initiative aims to support exploratory projects through open calls. This support includes sponsorship, publicity support, as well as mentorship. And with these two key phases, the Good Design Research encourages designers to develop unique value propositions. In particular, it seeks to support designers embarking on projects with deep explorations into these three key tracks: identity and culture, systems and processes, as well as new technologies. It also seeks to support projects with a focus on design impact. So I hope this brief overview gives you a rough idea of what the Good Design Research Initiative is all about. And if you would like to find out more information about this initiative, you may scan the QR code on the bottom right. And with this, I'll pass the time back to Jerica.
Thank you, Huimi. Now, before we move into presentation by Francis, we'd like to understand from our attendees on your understanding and impression of inclusive design. A poll question should be appearing on your screens now with 3 options on how we can engage youth with special needs. Choose the option that you feel will be most effective. First, a drag and drop game that teaches basic life skills. Second, a visual timer represented by a fish tank filling up with water. And third, both items. Okay, I guess most of you have given your answers. We will now close the poll. Okay, so most of you, 62% of you actually think it's both items, and followed by a drag and drop game that teaches us basic life skills. We will now invite Francis to actually take the stage and share with you more about the design considerations behind this poll, as well as his presentation on inclusive design for education and work readiness. Francis, please.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Okay, today I will share about a few things. I will start with sharing about trampolines, who we are, how they came about. I also talk about some inclusive design with some demonstration in real life that help you have a more concrete understanding. With that, I will actually go into a specific case study focusing on the digital product to help you get a better understanding how inclusive design come about and who can be involved in those designs. Lastly, I would like to extend an invitation for all of you to join us in this journey. Okay, a little story about Trampolene and how the name comes about. We actually take inspiration from our Senior Minister, Taman. In the speech given at St. Holland, he actually mentioned that our Singapore model is not promoting social welfare. Rather, we believe in the philosophy of social trampoline. We help those who fall through the gaps to get back up. And what about Trampoline? How do we come about? We are actually a non-profit. It's a spin-off from A-Star. Trampoline is actually founded by a group of enthusiastic volunteers. Most of them are engineers and scientists by training. They aspire to give back to the society using their experience and expertise. Through today's presentation, I hope you get a sense of how different parties can come together to make this society more inclusive through inclusive design. Lastly, I also touch about, other than our volunteers, we also have other stakeholders that are on this platform, like caregivers themselves. We also have PWDs, people with disability, who are with us in our journey in developing our product. In short, Trampoline is like a platform where everyone come together, contribute ideas, share their experience to make product and services for those who are underserved in our society. Now, if you look at our world, whether is it the desktop or the webinar you're accessing, it's usually built for the majority who are able-bodied, who are neurotypical. So what about for those who are the minority population, such as the senior, even though we are aging population, we have more and more senior in our society, you with special needs, and people who are physically disabled. Are the product, our environment, our infrastructure easily accessible or similarly accessible to them? For example, if I visually impaired, can I look at the screen like what most of you are accessing through this webinar? The answer is obviously no. Can we make life a little easier and better for those who are underserved? Through inclusive design. So we need to look at the client profile, that who are we servicing when we design product and services in mind. So I will share some of the product and services that has been designed by Trampolene. And I will share with you to answer a few questions now. Who can be involved? What does Trampolene do? What is an inclusive design? All right. So take, for example, the icon on left corner called VOOP. VOOP is also known as Volunteer Optimizer. And interestingly, VOOP is actually developed by a group of volunteers. How did it come about? Through their own volunteering experience, the group of volunteers find that they can make things easier, better, more productive. How so? Right? Registration can be made easier through, for example, barcode scanner. Right? Attendance can be made, activity can be made easier through matching. If I am volunteering for one organization, I can find, and my interest, for example, is a skilled volunteer as an IT person. Through a system, it can easily match me to organization where those volunteering activity available. And hence, you can see that as a volunteer, you can also participate in design that is for a targeted group, right? And what about the next one? I look at the second icon, Smart BFA. BFA stands for Barrier-Free Access. Why is it smart? Part of the team that developed this solution, they are actually wheelchair user themselves. And if you put yourself in the foot of someone who is a wheelchair user, you would think they will access amenities, services like any one of us do. For example, if you're on a wheelchair, it can be a manual wheelchair, it can be an electrical wheelchair. Now, the slope on the pavement make a difference to whether you can get from point A to point B. Similarly, if there's road work ahead, and if you are walking on pavement that's very narrow, you could get stuck. And based on the pavement itself, it's probably very difficult for you to make a U-turn and get yourself out there. So you could actually be stuck in a place for very long. The third one is that for accessing to amenities such as our train station, usually there's only one way to access the train station and to access the lift to lead to the platform. If you do not know the way, you have a hard time navigating around. The next thing they are always looking for is toilets, a wheelchair accessible toilet. Right? So these are things that we took for granted, but to them, it's important to have this information before they even begin their journey. And this is the reason why that they themselves as users, they work with other designers, system engineers to come up together, develop apps to help them navigate from point to point. The other one I will touch on is iGain, bottom middle corner. This is actually a gamification software to help children and young adults with learning difficulties or with special needs to learn numeracy, life skills, as well as basic language skills. It's actually developed by parents themselves, educators, designers, engineers, come together, they put their head together and develop this iGain. Because if you are familiar with special education school, they are usually half day. So what do the children do for the rest of the half day? One way to engage them is through game, which make them learn at the same time. And that's how iGain was conceived and developed, and currently is being applied in schools. So then the question you have is, okay, yeah, I hear you about inclusive design. How does it look like? How do you create a product? Now, these are all good questions. So before I go there, we touch on something closer to our heart, closer to our daily life. For example, how many wheelchair accessible swimming pools are you aware there are in Singapore? Now, how does a child with muscular dystrophy, for example, brush his teeth? How does a student with hearing impairment learn in class or in lecture hall? Or how does someone with hearing impairment carry out a conversation? How does people with visual impairment travel from place to place, including travel to work daily? And what kind of job can a person with autism find? Now look at the picture on the left. Have you seen this kind of toothbrush before? Or have you tried using such toothbrush before? Right? You can see that it's actually designed in a certain way. And if you look at the handle, what does it tell you? It's designed for someone who need to grip it with different grip. So it could be this person either have fine motor skill issue or they have strength issue, and that's why the design is done in this way. So a simple thing like toothbrush can be designed to allow someone have an easier life, daily life living, brush their teeth. Very, very simple thing that we need to do daily, but we took for granted because we are not affected, right? So this design is not very difficult, but it just needs a little bit of consideration. And you can see that it's so creative. There are, on this picture itself, there are already 6 designs. So I'm quite sure if you stretch your imagination, you would have seen more. What about the picture on the right? What are they? Are they pictures for kids to learn? Right. If you have kids with learning difficulty, especially autism, you know that this type of picture helps them to communicate when they're young. Because most of the young children with autism, they have social communication deficit, meaning that they may have problems speaking, communicating what they want. A picture helps them. For example, it could be a yes, it could be a no, it could be I'm happy. This will help you to understand them and communicate with them. These are tools. This tool on the right is also called augmentative and alternative communication tools. Now, let's come to daily life. You can see in this picture on the left, that's Graceful. That she's working with a senior. You can see the senior actually have his hand and leg amputated, and he can access the swimming pools because they actually have a slope slide that allows someone who is physically disabled to sit on the platform and actually move them down to the pools. It's not possible for them to just jump into any pool. These pools are specially designed. So including our public amenities like swimming pool has to be designed to be more inclusive so that people who are disabled can actually participate in leisure sports. On the right hand side, you can see that there's an athlete playing certain games and it's designed for certain purposes. Now you look at that picture, this game probably is testing. What does it test? It tests their fine motor skill, dexterity, and probably the ability to control their movement, right? Most of us are probably familiar with Yiping Siu, the Paralympic who won the gold medal in Paralympic. But there are actually many games like that, para games designed for people with different abilities or disability, I want to say, and get them involved in our life and to be more integrated in our society. So you can see the two design and just now design for daily life, for sports. And next, I come to learning. Remember I mentioned what if you have hearing impairment, how do you communicate on a daily basis? Do you use sign languages? And even for sign languages, I'm not too sure you're aware, there's a Singapore sign language, there's an English sign language, there's an American sign language for English language alone. Right? So you have many languages to learn. So can we use tools to overcome? Because one of the questions is that how many of us are prepared to learn sign languages in order to communicate with someone who is hearing impaired? Chances are not many of us. Right? So you look at that. Now you look at the picture on the left, top left corner. It's actually a speech-to-text software, and you can download all this software through your iOS or Google Play. So as you speak, they actually translate your speak into language and to words, so that someone can follow the conversation. So this is very particularly useful in a classroom setting where people can learn as the teacher speaks, and they actually can learn and they follow the classes. The other picture you can see, like whether it's adaptive keyboard, mouse, or pointers. It helps for them to access digital products. Some people need a bigger keyboard so that they can see and type. Some people need a specially designed mouse so that they can play around. It could be that they don't have fine motor skills, right? Or if you see someone who has stroke patient, they have problem mulling their fingers. So all this design, as you see on this one, help them to learn, to communicate with us, to overcome the barrier. And most of the products are designed for, like I mentioned, for majority. With slight consideration, you actually, for example, for text, speech to text, they can actually attend classes, they can use computer to learn, they can submit assignments. So with the same thought process, we actually applied those into our own products. Be it Smart DFA that I talked about just now, iGain, or earlier. So let me touch on Smart BFA. I mentioned about some of the challenges that face. So if you are a user that face the challenges, you need to know where is the washroom or wheelchair. You need to plan your route ahead from point A to B. You need to know exactly where to move to get to a train station. and then to the lift in the train station to get to the platform to take the train. You also need to know as you exit from the train station, where is the path to go in order for you to get out of the train station and to go to your destiny. All this information need to be known before they move. That's what I'm not too sure. Are you aware that most of the time for wheelchair users, they usually try to minimize drinking and eating before they go out, because looking for wheelchair accessible toilet is always an issue. All right, and they also need to make sure that the battery are fully charged, just in case there's a road work and they need to make a big detour to get to their destination. These are things that we took for granted, right? But that's not true for a wheelchair user. This is the reason why they need real-time navigation information. They also need up-to-date, point-to-point accessible route. What do you mean accessible route? Remember I mentioned about road work? If there's a road work, the route that was accessible will not be accessible for the next couple of moments. And this is why they need this information. And how can this information be communicated? By the community of users. They can update each other. I'm at point, for example, I'm at location X. There's a road work going on. Try to avoid using this route. So simple idea, through apps, it can be used and allow users to navigate and allow them to get out of the house, do what they're supposed to do, whether it be work or be it grocery shopping. Now look at these pictures itself. Let me talk a bit about dementia in order to help you understand this app. Now, senior with dementia, usually their short-term memory are impacted, but their long-term memory is usually intact. So it takes a while for the disease to slowly chip away their long-term memory. Now, what can help to make the long-term memory intact? We call it the neuron pathway, meaning that keep exposing them to the same content, same information. How so? There's something called reminiscent therapy. So you can look at pleasant memories. Okay, example, their visit to Chinatown. Right. It also can be something quite common in their time. For example, records, record players, or food. There's reminiscent that they can associate with their time. So, for example, mooncake, Mid-Autumn Festival coming. It could be the mooncake in Dazhonghua, a particular shop in Dazhonghua. So by capturing this content, we actually put it inside these apps. And what we observe is that in actual practice, the reminiscent, the therapies expose the content to the senior and engage them in this game. So we actually, what we does is that we work with the therapists and the caregiver. We digitize the game so that the caregiver can actually play with the senior at home, and the senior can play among themselves. So what does this do? It slows down the regression due to dementia. It also promotes social interaction among the senior. We actually can see that seniors are happier when they can connect with each other and connect people around them. And there's also an element of fun. All games should have an element of fun. Next, we will ask the question, why do we need to have iGame? You have to, if you see from the lens of someone with learning challenges, their brain are wired differently. They face many barriers through learning because, like I mentioned before, our education content are usually built for the majority. So I take a very simple example. If I look at a straight line, it may not appear straight to me. It may appear curved. So if you ask me to cut a cake, I could keep cutting this way if you can see my hand. Now the reason is because a straight line appears curved to me. So so what happened is that I will keep doing this movement. How do I train this? Actually, I can. One way is that I help your hand and do this movement and keep asking you to do this repeatment. So after a while, your brain will train to see curve line as straight, right? So there are different ways to train. So is it the person cannot see, or they can see, but their brain process the information differently, or they have weak estimation, they cannot know how hard to cut, for example. And if you cut a cake too hard, you will break apart, right? So by understanding what is causing the challenges, we actually can design possible intervention. And we actually incorporate some of this into video game to help them learn. Then I'll come to touch on another increasingly it's an increasing amount of population. There are more and more people diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, or commonly known as ASD. They, it could be due to better diagnosis or early diagnosis. But in short, why is it that most of them have challenges integrating into our society? It's simple. We are like Earthling, and they come from another different planet. They don't understand the way we think. They don't understand the way we interact. Why do we behave in the way we do? Okay, this is one of the reasons why most of them they have faced challenges learning in the mainstream school or getting into employment. So I give you an example. If you tell someone to finish the work ASAP, so ASAP, is it 1 minute, 1 day, 1 hour? So it's not very concrete. But most of us can somehow, through working with other people, we get a sense ASAP could mean by the end of the day. But that is not so for someone who is on the autistic spectrum. They prefer very concrete information. So one way to communicate that with them is, can you finish this piece of work by the end of today? But end of the day can mean 12 a.m. By 5 p.m. end of the day. Now, if you have any question regarding your work, please look for Mrs. Nair, who is your English teacher. Okay. These are very, very specific instructions that they can understand. So allow me to jump into a certain case study to give you a better appreciation of how inclusive design is being practiced, from gathering the problem statement, the pain point, to the design process and the validation process. As I mentioned earlier, you need to understand the target audience. Who are you trying to serve? What is their challenges? What are you trying to overcome? So for iGain, the first pilot project that we did with the school was for young children and youth between 7 to 18 years old. They have moderate to severe multiple disabilities, including usually most of the IQ are below 50. So what we want to achieve is that, can we help them learn life skill, learn basic numeracy skill, as well as basic language skills. And the content had to be localized to help them learn better. And we hope to have very interactive adaptive game features so that it keep their interest and it keep their learning motivation. So what we advise is that we actually go into classroom, observe how teacher actually conduct lesson in the actual classroom to this group of users. And what are the challenges they face? What's the teacher to student ratio? When the teacher is engaging one student, what happens to the rest of the students? Are they paying attention or are they disengaged? So from this is how we find that digital gaming can augment classroom. One of the reasons I mentioned was because after school, they tend to be quite free, right? So through this journey itself, we actually invite the caregivers to give feedback. We work with the teachers, we work with the allied professional to design the game, to digitize the content. We design the user interface with designers itself. You can see it's very clean, one color, and that is intention, and that is through many iterations to know that why is clean and one color? Because it minimizes distraction to the user. They know exactly where to place, where to touch. So what are the key features and learning points we have? Gamification helps to motivate kids. All of us love game. We love to be engaged. We love to be engaged. So gamification definitely helps. But that's not the only factors. What about modules? You need to design modules with different levels so that kids can progress. And also they can set themselves challenges to know that when level 1, I want to go to level 2. So game level give very concrete path for someone to learn and pace themselves. And third is it has to be related to their daily living. Remember our target profiles of young children, and daily living that's applied to Singapore context. For example, you want to teach them food, it had to be chicken rice or char kway teow or nasi lemak. Right? If you talk about pasta and something, it may not resonate with them. Okay? And the last one will be, it had to be intuitive. They look at the screen, they know that I'm supposed to touch this part, and will not be confused by a lot of color or a lot of sound. Right? Okay? Because remember, we need to be mindful of their cognitive capacity as well. Okay, so you look at the left and the right. The content is something that as you work with the teacher, work with the caregiver, we find that these are the knowledge that will help them not only in learning, but in and towards their journey towards independent living. The right side is something that we need to design. How do we impart this knowledge to them? So you can see that in terms of inclusive design, sometimes you need more than one type of skill set. You need a content developer, in this case, an educator themselves. On the right hand side, you need engineers. They are game designers, they are interface designers, right? And you also need caregiver to provide input. How does their child actually use? What are the challenges they face? What are the? You remember I showed you the mouse, the keyboard. Yeah. So those are the ones that you need to take note as well. Okay. So like I mentioned just now, the key consideration are physical limitation, cognitive limitation, or the behavioral challenges. If you have short attention span, having a lot of colors in the screen may distract you, right? Or having a lot of sound, you may be more motivated by triggering a sound or music than in actually learning. So all these considerations have to be taken inside. Understand how it affects learning from the user interface to the content presentation. For example, you need to have more words or less words. Should the word be a certain font size? Those are the design considerations. So you look at physical consideration. Now, if you remember, you see a picture of someone who has fine motor skill challenges. You need a wider area to touch, and hence you need larger space between objects. So remember, our target audience was children with multiple disabilities. Less object on the screen, right? Wider space so that they can navigate and they can touch and click, interact with surfaces. The other one is also, do they understand what is drag and drop? Drag and drop to you or to most of us may be very intuitive, but for some of the kids, one is they cannot do drag and drop, partly because of physical disability. They may not have the strength to pull from one place to another. Right? The other thing is that if they have attention deficit, it can become very confusing if they need to click at one point, move the other part. They may lose focus along the way. The cognitive consideration that even among our profile or learner with disability, they have different level of, right? They start from different phase. So we need to have level of difficulty to engage them. So you need to design a game where it can target this population, yet within this population, it has level of difficulty so that certain tasks are made simpler for entry level, certain tasks are made more difficult for advanced level. For example, if I say fold a towel into half, that could be simple. What if I say fold a towel into third? Now that is more difficult, right? Similarly, you need to give feedback, whether they are right or wrong, so that it helps them to know that they got the right answer and they can move on to the next stage. Or they know that I make a mistake here, I should come back and relearn. I touch on attention span, which is why you can see the design was very clean. Same color scheme throughout the entire interface. This is meant more to capture the attention and prevent them from getting distracted. And the instruction, you can see the clean, is very easy to follow. It encourages them to play and also allow them time to process the information. Now, some of our future plans is that we want to have more contents. So with more teachers coming on board, they can give us more, or caregiver coming on board, we can have more content targeting a wider audience, right? We could also have more robust infrastructure so that when you develop a content, we can quickly deploy and scale that. We also can have better user interface design or gamification. For example, just now you saw the rabbit. Can a rabbit be more interactive, have a personality of themselves, so that it's more engaging for the students and the users? Now, after talking to you, we hope that we can get more and more people to participate in this journey. So whether you are caregivers, you are designers, furniture designers, or engineers, we hope to hear from you. So for some of the problem statement will be like accessibility. We want to develop human capacity. Can we change the environment? It can be applied to game design, activity design, or even environmental design. Okay. I show you this picture itself, right? So for example, if you are talking about broom, what happens if I have problem holding on broom? Remember the toothbrush? Can you design the handle such that I can learn how to sweep? Okay. Do you realize that this broom doesn't have a very very inclusive design in terms of handle. That's one. The two, second one, robot. For someone with social communication deficit, we notice a communication pattern. Can this content be digitized, for example, through a robot or through an interesting game? Encourage them to talk so that they can help to form in the mind how to go about initiate a conversation, sustaining a conversation, closing a conversation appropriately, and this will help them make friends. And we have friends in a conversation, you feel connected and you feel integrated, right? The third is office design. For example, for office itself, can we have adjustable light filters? Some people are very sensitive to lights or bright lights. If you have adjustable light filters itself, it allow the environment to be adjusted very without massive renovation. Similarly, for chairs, if you're aware someone with attention deficit, when they sit on a chair, sometimes they tend to rock, right? So can the chair be in such a way that it can absorb certain movements so that the person while rocking, it helps them to regulate, self-regulate, and then you bring their attention back to what the task they are doing. Okay, I have more or less come to the end of my presentations. And okay, and if you have some question, I could take it up, or I could take it at the end of the presentation itself.
Thank you, Francis. Your presentation illustrated the in-depth research and understanding that's required to design products and services for people with disabilities. Now, attendees, if you have any questions or thoughts about Francis's sharing, feel free to drop them into the Q&A module so that we can bring them up for discussion during the Q&A segment later on. Now, let's take half a minute here to actually understand from our audience your opinions on hashtagging and how accessible language is. A poll should appear on your screens right now with 3 options on the ways which the term digital accessibility can be formatted. Which one would you think is the easiest to read and understand? So first impressions count, so don't take too much time to answer this question. And close the poll now. Okay, so the majority of you feel that option A is actually, I guess, the most accessible, and I guess that's the right answer. We will now actually invite Ianton, who will be elaborating on the answer as well as sharing about his presentation on designing using conversational AI. Ianton, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jerica. Before I start, I think most of you are quite good in terms of using the hashtag. But to be honest, when I actually first started, I didn't actually realize the key differences. I've been using my hashtags in smaller caps. So this is one of the important things that why we need more people to be in this ecosystem to understand more and come up with even better inclusive design. So our journey started during this year, where we are actually a marketing and advertising agency, which specializes in marketing technology. And as what Jerica has mentioned earlier on, what made us actually go into this journey of doing inclusive design through our technology. So it was quite an interesting journey, and I hope to share this journey with everyone on this call. And hopefully we can actually work towards helping more people in the inclusive community to come up, to learn better, to train better, and actually enrich themselves on the same landscape. This is just a little bit of the brands that we work with globally from our end, and some of our key strategic technology partners that we work with closely to develop our AI and marketing technology. Okay, these are some of the key 3 MarTech products that we have in this space, but today I'm just going to focus on Aleph, which is the conversational AI technology that we have, and would like to share a little bit more of what we have been doing with it so far. And looking forward to actually hear more opinions and have an open discussion later on to see how we can actually bring this technology into more people's life. So many people will ask me, what is conversational AI? I just want to illustrate this fact with this video.
Malaria isn't just any disease. It's the deadliest disease there's ever been.
Se dice que ha matado más de la mitad de la población que ha existido.
وما زالت تقتل طفلا كل دقيقتين.
Mais nous pouvons y mettre fin. Nous savons comment, nous en avons la possibilité.
हमें और अधिक कार्रवाई की जरूरत है.
我们需要让世界领导人关注。
Hivyo tunazindua kampeni ya sauti.
Au moins les bawari au pays malaria.
Speak up and say, malaria must die. One voice can be powerful, but all of our voices together, then they...
Okay, so interestingly, this is actually what we actually been doing. So as you can see, David Beckham actually has spoken in 9 different languages and actually is still using the same video. So these are one of the key technology that we're actually working on and working towards, and working with different partners that does emotion AI. As you can see, they are actually using emotion AI to actually alter the signs of his lips so that they can actually move and talk as if they are speaking in another different languages. So these are interesting things we're doing. So over here at left, we propose to actually do conversations plus AI, but with a vernacular element to it. What is vernacular? We actually focus on language and dialects spoken by the ordinary people in a specific country or region. And especially in ASEAN, this is actually a very important thing where we do have a lot of vernacular languages. Places like in Philippines where Tagalog is used, Thailand, Vietnam, etc. So in the ASEAN region, language is a very big barrier in terms of learning. So how do we actually use AI to improve conversations, eliminate the language barrier in a lot of different aspects? Our own technology right now will be able to support over 30 languages and dialects worldwide. We just started our initiative in Singapore to learn the Singlish language as well. And that's the reason why we're actively doing much more in the Singapore market. And hopefully with this collaboration, talking to people, folks like you guys, as well as with Design Singapore Council, we can come up with more products that can actually be able to tap on this conversational AI technology. As explained earlier on, this is one of our earliest projects that we actually started off with. And I just wanted to give an illustration. This is how we made our first foray. We actually developed this technology, thinking that we want to actually use it for OH home, where, you know, going into an elevator, people pushing the wheelchair, they would actually have a lot of issues in terms of communicating with the lift, holding the lift, putting it. People that are doing this, caregivers, you guys know what I'm talking about. This is actually an important pain point. And when actually we took that pain point and thinking of how we can actually use our technology in terms of conversational AI to communicate with the lift, that's what we actually came up with. Elevator. Lobby. So as you can see, this is not rocket science. It's just the ability to understand different languages and different dialects to actually make contact with the lift. And with this particular product, we actually became more supported in today's, how I put it, in today's COVID situation, where there's a lot of contactless technology needed. And that's why we are very fortunate to work with the Singapore government agencies, as well as partners, as well as we are going on trials with Hitachi Elevator to actually test our particular technology on their lifts to make it truly accessible to not only folks that are trying to clear themselves out of this COVID, but also looking at helping more people with accessibility issues. How do we actually use this to actually bring this technology closer? People could be able to do their daily lives with all these kind of tools. A little bit on the technology side, which I think it will be interesting to share with folks over here, every one of you over here, is that what is the key technology behind conversational AI? In a simple way, we just focus on 3 main points over here, which is the NLS or NLP, which is widely known as, we call it natural language simulation, automatic speech recognition, ASR, as well as text to speech, which is the conversational part of it, where we are able to convert all the data or all information from either speech to text or text to speech, so that we have a common denominator to understand the language, be it the language or the context of the instruction or the information that is given. And through that, we are able to reduce everything to a common denominator. We apply this technology into different solutions, like from B2B solutions, where we work with industry-focused products to actually develop some products over here, as well as B2C solutions where it's out in the market. For example, the contactless lift that you saw, where we're actually building up from scratch. With this kind of solution to integrate it into applications that can be out to the market and go to market quite easily. Behind all this, I think we are also working on the entire big data platform, which I will elaborate a little bit more on, where how do we make use of all this information, especially in the accessibility point of view, to learn more about behaviors, about users, and then we can actually develop better, even better products later on for all these users. Next, This is just an example of the text-to-speech that we spoke of earlier on.
What is accessible
Let me turn it a little bit
design and
louder.
why is it so important?
As you can see, our
In this
text-to-speech
diverse world,
model
not
will be
everyone
able
can
to
use
actually speak
various
in a
products
natural form of
smoothly
language.
without
If you notice
obstacles.
over here,
Excellent area
the way
free
they are
design
speaking
not
is not
only
a
allows
very
disabled
pure
users to
robotic sense.
interact
It's
with
quite
the product
natural. So we
normally,
actually
but
have
also
that model
provides a
that
better
will be
user
able to cover
experience for
anything from
ordinary
British
people.
English.
什么
This
是
is
无障
in
碍
British
设计？
English.
为什么它这么重要？在这个多样化的世界上，并不是所有人都能毫无障碍顺利的使用各种产
As you
品。
can see over here,
优
it's
秀的
in
无障碍
Mandarin.
设计不仅能让残疾人用户正常的与产品交互，还会为普通人提供更好的使用体验。Apakah itu desain yang dapat diakses
To Bahasa
dan mengapa
Indonesia.
itu sangat penting? Di dunia yang beragam ini, tidak semua orang dapat menggunakan berbagai produk dengan lancar tanpa hambatan. Desain bebas halangan yang luar biasa tidak hanya memungkinkan pengguna yang cacat untuk berinteraksi dengan produk secara normal, tetapi juga memberikan pengalaman yang lebih baik bagi orang biasa.
As well as Cantonese.
口語的特色主要有句子比較短小。
This Cantonese demo is just to let you know that it understands different dialects. I'm not able to use the exact same Chinese words actually, because in the way where people are pronouncing or talking in Cantonese, it's more of a localized manner. So that's why I actually use this sentence instead of the original sentences that was duplicated in different languages as well. Okay. So actually we are talking earlier on, how does this accessibility technology will be able to help more as per what they have mentioned earlier on. We do notice that it's not only able to help people in the inclusive community, it's actually able, accessibility also means that it allows us to develop products that provides a better user experience for all of us, even people like you and me. Everyone is fair and square. Everyone out there will be able to enjoy it. So these are some statistics that we actually known, especially for travel, where a lot of people from different countries still find that language is a barrier. How can they have better products? How can they enjoy the experience much better? And through this accessibility design, I just wanted to reiterate the fact that we are designing it for everybody. And when through this design, the more people that will be able to contribute to it, we'll be able to come up with better customer experiences. A bit of a fun fact about this technology, I just wanted to share with all of you here. How are we able, why is our technology good, or how is it accurate, or why we are different in the market? The way we are using a learning model, it was quite interesting, where all this natural language processing is actually named after Sesame Street. So we have Ernie, we have Bert. So our particular, this model that we actually use, the Ernie model, actually was the first model that scored more than 90 on this glue platform, glue metrics, which is a machine translation, natural language understanding kind of score. And they became the first one to score more than 90. And how it does that was through using Chinese language to learn Chinese language. They realized that it can be also applied in learning English or other languages and make it even much better in learning. So this is one of our earliest product that we came up with. It's actually a conference solution where you can see over here, where we are able to translate and interpret simultaneously for solutions in English and Chinese in this case. It was one of the earliest products we produced back in late 2016 and 17. So this is one of our key technology.
Today,
and then we slowly actually
experienced
evolve
the
more
latest language translation technology. We are very impressed.
So from a market perspective, I mean, I come from a marketing background, right? As we have mentioned, this is actually a very important market. A Gartner report has shown that more than 50% of consumer-facing companies will be using conversational AI as part of their user experience or customer experience journey. And this largely says that this is a very big market, and how we can actually apply this conversational AI to an even wider, larger space is through accessibility, which we firmly believe in as well. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that if we are actually going into this market, the market is really huge, and we'll be able to do something and make it sustainable. Some of our applied AI solutions that we actually have did, over here, you can see that we actually developed unmanned customer service kiosk for hotels. We also have a smart information kiosk that's running in the Hong Kong airport, which is on trial right now, where it's also unmanned. It provides information through speech and recognizes speech. Just now, the contactless leave, we are quite happy to be supported by the IPI Singapore to actually promote this and work on global collaboration with partners around the world. As you can see, I'm someone that kind of believe a lot into video, so I would just want to show what we actually use our technology in. In this particular case, as you can see over here, the captions, and you can see the background noises. What we are using in automotive right now, where there are applications into self-driving, where we will be able to use our voice controls in self-driving cars. Over here is a fact that we're actually using our technology to understand or to hear, even though with ambient noises, the accuracy of this transcription. So what you see over here right now below is real-time transcriptions. And as you can notice, the background can be a bit noisy. And this is just to prove that the accuracy and transcription of our technology is very accurate, even though there are a lot of ambient noises where we actually use AI to eliminate those noises in the background. Okay. There are some in the application of the technology besides accessibility, we're actually focusing our technology or our use of our technology in vertical industry. Reason being that we are actually very focused and make it even more accurate compared to our global competitors. The reason why we are able to perform better on the blue score, and another metric for evaluating machine translation over here, you can see our technology left over here. We outperform platforms like Google, iFlyTech, Microsoft, Baidu, all the big global players in the F&B, in the hotel industry, which is hospitality is one of our focus. We are also working on it in education, in fintech, and the automotive industry, as you have seen earlier on. Accessibility for us is a horizontal, where you try to apply the technology and make it even more accessible across all the different industries that I spoke of earlier on as well. Our technology is filed in the US. We have patents filed in the US and in China as well. So the basis of this technology in terms of natural language understanding due to many years of accumulation. Coming to the end of my presentation, one of the tests that we're actually doing is actually in the line of application of education. And I think earlier on, Francis has shared very well with the stuff that he's doing. And I mean, for example, Francis will be a terrific partner for us to actually work with together in terms of how do we help the inclusive community to learn better through better design of the learning tools that they would have. One of the key things why we are focusing on education is that we firmly believe that with the use of AI or technology, we will be able to level the playing field between the inclusive community and the globe. And every talent will have a chance to outshine itself by learning better through AI, as well as using AI as a tool to equip them with better skills and enhance their abilities to outperform in the same roles that they are doing compared to, say, a normal person as well. So over here, we do have a platform education portal where we are helping the inclusive community to actually learn much better through videos online and through watching the videos, transcribing the videos, understanding the videos through audio, learning the blank, they will be able to understand language in a better way. And through the design of the gamification as well, to make sure that there will be a gamified way, they will be able to learn much effective and much better compared to stuff. One of the key features here of the use of technology is through the multilingual transcription, keyword identification. We are able to understand the keywords within the whole of the video, identify what are the important things to learn, take them away, and use them as a form of fill in a blank for kids or for the people to actually, for the inclusive community to learn by filling in the blanks and learning it properly through enjoying watching a video. This is what we call immersive learning anyway. We are also able to use our technology in voice recognition grading, where they can actually speak back and we'll be able to recognize a voice, similar like what you see in karaoke, where they grade you on how you sing. We'll be able to grade in terms of the intonation, the pronunciation, the tone of the speech to see whether the particular person is speaking properly and how we can help the learner to actually learn much better. Okay. To close this session, of course, I would like to first thank Design Singapore Council for inviting me to work on this particular chat session together with Francis. And I've really learned a lot myself as well. And I'm coming here to also learn from all of us, all of you here, and see how we can actually work together in accessibility innovations. If you have any innovations out there, we are happy to see how we can actually provide even more help with our AI technology. In terms of product design, how we can actually help in terms of your product design process and the final product, as well as people that are doing this user experience, user interface design, how we can actually better enhance the whole experience through conversational AI, through multilingual, eliminating their language barrier. All right, with this, I just want to end with a quote from Bill Gates that AI can be our friend. Do not be afraid of it. Thank you very much. And I would like to hand it back over to Jerica. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ianton. Thank you for the sharing. It is indeed really interesting to learn more about the various applications of conversational AI. We are now moving into the Q&A segment, and I would like to invite both Francis and Ianton back to join us as panelists. And actually, I see quite a few questions that have been posted on the Q&A module. I will try our best definitely to see what we can answer today, but if we don't, we'll follow up with you right after today's webinar, so please feel free to keep them coming. Our first question comes from Dawn and is directed at Francis actually. Two questions actually. Dawn's question is about inclusive design and if Trampolene has consulted with persons with disability during the development stages of your projects. Her next part of her question covers the type of users which Trampolene works with. Is it limited to just caregivers, teachers, and parents? Francis, would you like to take this question?
Sure. Right. So in our product development itself, we work with both people with disability and non-disabled person. So for example, for Smart BFA, which I share, is actually developed by users who are user of wheelchair themselves, they are disabled. So has engineers and scientists on the team. So they are both developers and users, and they have outreached the same community. And so the answer is yes. But we also involve non-disabled, for example, designers, some of the engineers they are not. So we have a team, inclusive team. Right? Yep. The other question she asked is about, I know Dawn personally, I met her before, by the way. Dawn, if you recall. Right? So we actually work with engineers. We are quite happy to reach out. And one of the, we're trying to form different communities, for example, research community, that can give us better idea to come up with evidence-based practices and evidence-based product and services. These are very, very good idea, and we are definitely open to have further discussion, right? Okay.
Okay, thanks, Francis. Now, our next question is from Khan, and it's directed at both panelists, actually. So the question is about, does your research on children cover across various cultures? And do you think culture plays a role in the different learning processes that the children might have?
Okay, Ian, maybe I go ahead first. All right.
You go ahead, don't worry.
Yes, I think culture play a part. So I give you a very specific example for like someone who's autistic. We know for different cultures, some cultures tend to be more expressive, and they tend to value in individual, where some cultures tend to be more team or more group based. So you can see the difference. So for example, if you would like to see some of the series itself, you can see those who are from, let's say, Western country, they tend to be more vocal, more expressive as compared to those in Asian society. So culture does play a part.
Ianton, would you like to add anything on to that?
Yeah, I'm sure. I think I actually know Khan as well. So Khan is a very good designer as well. He's part of our Business of Purpose community. So thanks, Khan. Hi, how are you? So I think his particular question is very important, and that's the reason why we're actually coming in. A lot of cultures, they have inbuilt or in-depth embedded kind of thoughts towards learning, especially in Asian countries like us. I think Francis has highlighted. And through design, how do we take this approach totally different, and how do we share with facilitators, to parents, to caregivers? There's a different way to learn. I think this is actually a very interesting thing, and it's also a huge challenge in change management, we usually call it in technology terms. How do we actually enable people to take their mind off a different tool to learn, a different way to learn? I think this is always a very important part. We are still learning. We are learning, especially in this ASEAN region where it's quite diverse. In India, it's also very diverse, where how do we learn it more effectively, and how do we change the way for inclusivity, how do these kids will be able to learn better compared to their other peers, and if they are slightly disadvantaged in this particular sense, how do we bring them back again to the same level playing field that like I have been reiterating? I think that's something that's really interesting. And I think it's very important to educate both the facilitator, the parents, the teachers, as well as the kid only. Yeah. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that's indeed very insightful. The next question actually is targeted at Francis. So this is one of the challenge statements you should cover in your presentation slide earlier. And this is from Denise. So Denise is asking, why is there little social interaction between ASD individuals since preschool? Francis, would you be able to help to elaborate on that?
Okay, can. Just like any one of us, even people who are on ASD, they are different. Every individual is different. Some are probably more vocal, others are less. But in general, why we associate social communication deficit with ASD is because they tend to speak less, interact less, and they are more interested in something that they are. In short, they can be very interested in certain aspect. We call it narrow interest. Okay, but that doesn't mean that they cannot talk. So I think with enough interaction with the right environment, actually they can.
Okay. So the next question is actually on robotics. So it's an anonymous question actually. The question is about how robotics can help people with intellectual disability in the workplace. I know we didn't really cover much about robotics in today's presentation. So you can just feel free to share about some of your views so we can also have a discussion on it.
Okay. All right, so I just take this go first. So I give a very specific example, like in hospitals, like for example, you can see that there are robotics. They're sending either meals or food or laundry or clean linen to different part of the buildings. In the past, these are done by people, and some of the staff there are actually people with intellectual disability. So now you need to remember which item go to which room. They just need to stuck in onto a robot following instruction, and they make the step. We reduce the step, do the work. Some are replaced by robots, and by doing that, you actually create employment opportunity for someone with IDs. Yeah, and if you are aware, Yishun Community Hospital and Kutipot hire quite a fair bit of young adult with intellectual disability.
Yep. On my end, I think for the robotics, it's very important in terms of the learning whole process. It helps. Again, I think I also saw one of the questions that talk about the slightly negative part of the robotics, but I don't think we will discuss that in today's discussion. But I do believe that it will definitely enable and help them. It's a tool. Like I mentioned earlier on, I believe it will be a tool to actually help more people to say, for example, learn more about AI. And through learning about AI, for example, they equip themselves and it creates another new job opportunity for themselves. Actually, they also, as part of their learning process, they actually will be able to create more job opportunities or more a wider horizon of job opportunities for them to choose from as well. So that's what I firmly believe that in terms of robotics and its applications, it's definitely an enabler. And then, of course, it will be seen as helping match more. And, you know, in terms of, I think Francis has mentioned different kind of people with different kind of issues or about learning, they will be actually, I believe I saw some research in a way that there are some certain patients that actually react even better when talking to robotics instead of actually a human as well, for example. So I think these are some interesting things about robotics that we can actually pick up on and actually be more open in using it in terms of education, in terms of application into industries. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is an anonymous question that's directed at Ianton. I know today we spoke a lot about technology and some of the useful applications in designing for people with special needs. But this person is also asking, given that we are also battling today with misuse of it and inaccurate information on social media, how can this form of technology be protected against, I guess, future misuse?
I will take this first. So Francis, maybe you add in a little bit on what you feel as well. So I might be a little bit more biased. I think definitely there are such issues. And I think the issue in this recent environment these days is that more and more people are discussing about the ethical use of AI in terms of the applications. And I believe, you know, technology, like all tools and equipment, is a double-edged. it will have the good side of it. It can also be used to do not so good things. I think in place of certain standards, in the use of ethical applications, I think with those kind of global standards coming along the way, more and more people are placing emphasis. Researchers to technologies are actually focusing on how do we actually protect it much better and then use it for the good purposes, and yet we cannot eliminate the use of this in the wrong purposes, but how do we minimize it? And since it's already AI, how does AI counter AI? I think these are a lot of discussions, and totally I think we will be able to minimize it to a minimum, I believe. And I think in this particular application or into the accessibility technology industry, I believe it helps more than it harms more. Yeah.
Yeah. To follow up with what Ian said, and to use his technology as an example. For someone who has social communication deficit, if you have AI, you can help them to structure communication through a chatbot. So by communication itself, I can help you phrase a question. I can help you open up a conversation. I can even tell you this is off topic, out of boundary. So AI can help through machine learning, through enough context can help. So instead of giving a different live context, which is not possible, in this case, AI can help shorten a learning cycle and help someone to pick up social communication skills through very real life mimic situation that you can use AI machine learning to mimic the conversation and digitize it through a chatbot. So if you use properly, I think it has a lot of benefit for someone with disabilities.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Now, our next question is actually directed at Trampolene, but I think Ianton might also be able to answer too. So the question is about, do you have any special tools or methods that you use to obtain user feedback or to validate some of the tools and technologies that you mentioned earlier for people with special needs?
Okay. I think the user requirement process methodology are quite universal. The difference is actually in the emphasis on different phases and which method is better for different use cases and different type of disability. For example, we do a lot of ethnographic study, or in layman term, we go to study on site. We walk in their shoe because that is something that can help us empathize why are the challenges they face. For example, for Smart BFA, our staff actually sit on the wheelchair and navigate. And then you find that actually sitting on a wheelchair, if you've tried before, can be quite, after a while, your buttock will feel pain. That's one of the reasons why they need to get from point A to point B very fast. Okay, yeah. So you need, so it's in short, overall process is the same. The technique that you use for different situations need to be adjusted according to the use case. And I think more things like walking in the shoe, observation helps.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, then the next question is about, I guess, are there any examples of how technology has failed to solve some of these problems? I know these are actually very complex problems that cannot be solved in a very simple and straightforward manner, but if you have not managed to solve them, are there any way which you have done differently?
Oh, plenty. Failure is the mother of all success. We have more failures than I can recall. Okay. Part of the reason
same here.
The reason is that sometimes we don't understand. There are a few reasons. We don't understand the needs. We identify the wrong problem statement. All right. Or we try to overcomplicate things. For example, it's quite natural for someone from certain domain. Let's say if I'm a scientist, I'm a scientist in machine learning. I will try to use a lot of machine learning to come up with a solution. But does that really address the user need? Okay. So one example will be the AI that I just mentioned. It was so complicated that we ourselves cannot use, and let alone So it has good intention, but hence the outcome may not be what it is. So it's very, very important to always validate with the user to see that in actual use case, and to go back to ask your question. Did you meet your goal? Did you meet your outcome? Is the user using it? Right? There's no point having a very fantastic solution that doesn't address the user.
Yeah. I would like to add on to what Francis has said. I think this has happened so many times because especially I think that direction was also towards technology folks like us, where we sometimes, from a design or engineer perspective, you just want to do it to attain the use of it. But what about the user experience? And a lot of times, especially in the accessibility field, we might not be inclusive ourselves in terms of our consideration. We might be thinking of how a normal user like me and you will be using the technology to solve their problem. So I think the feedback is very important. And also addressing the previous question just now, how do you get the feedback? I think it's really always a challenge in terms of getting the feedback in terms of the user base. However, I would also say that with the use of this technology, we are able to crowdsource and consolidate feedback at an even bigger scale than ever before. So I think that's the pros and cons of the technology. With the technology, is really good in a way that we can get it to be scalable as long as we have as many users, and then improve the product much better. That's what AI does. It improves on its own. However, on the other side, is really getting, I think, more people on the base. And to actually end this off, I just want to encourage people not to be afraid of the failure, actually. For us, we came on board not thinking that we just wanted to contribute. We just think that, oh, somebody asked us, can your technology be used in the lift? I said, yeah, why not? Let's just do it. Don't think too much. I think this COVID has also taught our whole team that sometimes we tend to think too much as well in solving a problem. If there's certain things that we will contribute and reach out to solving the problem, why not try it first? And then we learn along the way. It might not be successful, but then we learn throughout, and actually through this whole process, I think we learn much more, and then it actually applies certain knowledge and help us to improve certain things in other projects that we're actually doing as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, panelists, for this engaging conversation. We have actually come to the end of our Q&A segment, and I still see quite a few questions that are still coming. So what we'll do actually is we'll answer them directly either in the Q&A chat or reach out to you via email after this session to answer them. So to our attendees, I really hope that this session has inspired you on ways you can incorporate technology to create inclusive communities for everyday living. Designers, we hope that this sharing has inspired you as well to research into new projects that can promote accessibility in communities. And if so, the good design research is actually an avenue that you can tap on. Our next open call for good design research will be launched in October, and it welcomes research and experimentation for design impact-driven project. Now I'll invite my colleague Hui Mei back to quickly share about upcoming open call. Hui Mei, please.
Hi, thanks, Jerica. So for those of you who are keen on design impact projects and are actually seeking inspirations and suitable project partners, we hope that this series of engagement and sharing sessions is meaningful for you. Like what Jerica mentioned, we will be launching our open call in mid-October. So do look out for our EDMs as well as our social media posts on the details of the launch. During the open call period, we will also be organizing a briefing session to share in more detail as to how to submit a strong proposal. In the meantime, these are some brief information on the support that we are extending to the selected projects, as well as the eligibility and assessment criteria that you should be aware of if you are keen to respond to the open call. So we will be supporting selected projects up to the proof of concept stage with cash sponsorship, publicity support, as well as mentorship. We will also be looking out for these 3 key criteria in your submissions. First, we are keen to know your long-term plans for the project beyond the proof of concept stage. The intent is to ensure that applicants are committed to the project. Secondly, we are also looking out for submissions that explores deep research that addresses global issues such as inclusivity and sustainability, and which goes beyond the standard user research. Lastly, we will also be looking out for projects that strengthens the applicant's unique value proposition. In the meantime, if you are keen to submit a proposal for the upcoming open call, do express your interest in the post-event survey and share your email contact so that we may reach out to you for a chat. With this, I'll pass the time back to Jerica.
Thank you, Hui Mei, and thank you everyone for taking the time to join us in this evening's discussion. Should you wish to revisit today's notes, a summary of the session will actually be shared with you via email, along with the relevant links on how you can reach out to each of our speakers. Appearing on your screen now should also be 2 QR codes. So scanning the QR code on the left will lead you to a post-event survey. Like what Hui Mei mentioned, if you'd like to get in touch with us, find out more about the Good Design Research Initiative, or if you're inclined to submit a proposal, please indicate accordingly and we'll be happy to follow up from there. Or if you'd like to find out more information on programs the National Design Centre has lined up under the theme of Singapore Our Home, scan the QR code on the right. Also, thank you so much, Francis and Ianton, for the wonderful sharing today. To all attendees, we hope that you have found the session inspiring and meaningful. We hope to see you again at subsequent events or even your submissions under the open call. Thank you and see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jerica.
Thank you.